Alright lads, so announced this morning we have a new difficulty of Guild Quest already coming out. In this case, the new Nightmare difficulty. Less than, what, 2 months ago we got the Nightmare difficulty after 2 years of the hard difficulty of Guild Quest. I was very surprised to see this announcement in-game, but after reading it, I'm starting to feel a tad bit better about it, especially given the fact that this was actually data mined like a week prior, and when that was data mined, I wasn't that happy about it, I'll be honest. The idea of a new difficulty already didn't really sit right for me, especially given the fact that already a lot of people are struggling in the very hard difficulty. A new Nightmare difficulty just didn't seem that needed, and I still kind of stand by that. But again, after reading the news post, I feel a bit better about it, mainly given the fact that this is not a permanent new difficulty. It's only going to be limited time, in this case for 1 week. Starting on the 25th, so Christmas Day, to the end of the year, we are going to be getting a Nightmare difficulty Guild Quest for the Meteorica Guild Quest and also the Ranged No Affiliation Guild Quest. As stated here, reading news, for a limited time only, we're introducing the special Nightmare difficulty Guild Quest. This is a high difficulty aimed at players who have already cleared the very hard difficulty, and it requires a well-chosen team as well as fast reflexes. Try your hand in this new challenge and aim for an even higher score. So, this is clearly aimed at people that have really good teams, right? I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to beat it, but continuing on, it says here that the rules of the Nightmare difficulty quests are the same as those in the very hards, but the enemies have higher stats and an even higher score can be attained. With the increase of an attainable score, we will also be getting more score rewards, which is pretty cool. So for those that possibly can beat this difficult quest, Nightmare difficulty, you will potentially get rewarded for it. What would those rewards be? We won't know until the day of. But if it means you can potentially get more rewards like orbs, then I'm all for it. Continuing on, they mention when it will be available, Phase 1 and Phase 2. They then say the Nightmare difficulty is extremely challenging and will only be available after you clear the very hard difficulty. And with the opening of the new limited time Nightmare difficulty, we'll also be making the following adjustments to very hard guild quests from the 25th. And in this case, they're actually making it a bit easier for those that are still struggling on the very hard guild quests. And the way they're doing this is that they're decreasing the defense for the enemies in wave 1 to 3, and they're also decreasing the attack of the bosses in all waves. So pretty cool of them to do that, to make it a bit more accessible for those that, haven't already beat the very hard difficulty. If I'm being honest though, it isn't going to make it so if you can only get to the third boss right now, you're going to be able to easily beat it with this new technical nerf. The HP is still the exact same, but with the decrease in defense, for those that get to the 5th boss and are very close to beating it, maybe just need a few extra seconds, the decrease in defense definitely will help you out here. And that might be the difference for you to be able to beat and not beat the very hard difficulty of Guild Quest. I know for me, the Meteor Sparta Guild Quest, as I only own a 1 out of 5 Bruno and no other really good characters that can go alongside him, it's definitely going to help me out. When it came back most recently, I had a few seconds to spare, so the decrease in defense is definitely going to make it a lot more easier for me to tackle the quest, and I assume it will be the same for some other people too. The decrease in attack is also pretty cool too. It makes it so your teammates can potentially take more hits. Most of the time though, you are using barriers and you're also providing crowd control with Vortex if you're trying to play it smart. So that also doesn't make that much of a difference. But on your screen, and it's probably been on your screen for some time now, we have the difference between the current very hard guild quest and also the new very hard guild quest. Of course, the bigger difference here is that the defense has been decreased by quite a bit. The first boss only having 3,000 defense as opposed to all bosses prior having 4,500 defense. Second boss has 500 more, and then the third boss also has an additional 500, and at that point, only the 4th and 5th boss have the 4,500 defense stat. Additionally, at least when it comes to the attack stat, there has been a noticeable decrease. Most of their attack stat basically being cut in half, right? Previously, every single boss had a 1,800 attack stat. Now the highest on the 5th boss is only 1,000. So this should definitely make the very hard difficulty a tad bit easier. I think the most noteworthy thing here is that it might make it easier getting into the 5th boss, because remember, even if you can't beat the very hard difficulty of Guild Quest, it's still worth attempting, because if you get into the 5th boss, well then you get the 30 out of 40 orbs you can get from any particular phase. This now might make it easier for you to get into the final boss, where you then can potentially get more rewards. Either way though, pretty cool of them to make the difficulty easier while introducing a new difficulty, even though it's only for a limited time, but the decrease in stats are a permanent change, which I think is a good thing. Now, with that said, let's actually have a look at the new difficulty, the Nightmare difficulty. And in this case, it's, the name makes sense. So previously, the final boss on the very hard difficulty had 25 million stamina. Now, the first boss on the Nightmare difficulty has 29 million stamina, so it's a massive difference here. And of course, with that, it just gets more difficult and more difficult in terms of HP. 35 million on second boss, 43 million on the second boss, 43 million again on the fourth boss, and then the final boss itself has 45 million HP. That is absolutely insane. Epic raid bosses, in fact, have a very similar stat number, right? 50 million. And in this case, you have to do all these bosses, 5 bosses, in under 1 minute time. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the defense stats are also very similar, 4,500 across the board, very similar to the current very hard difficulty Guild Quest. The only final boss here having a tad bit more defense at 4,650. Not going to be that noteworthy, but something just worth mentioning. And the attack stat is also lowered when compared to the current very hard difficulty. So in terms of the bosses doing damage to you, they're actually going to be a lot easier, weaker in the nightmare difficulty compared to what we have currently right now. Because again, on the very hard difficulty, every boss has 1,800 attack, where in the nightmare difficulty, when this does get implemented on the 25th, the highest attack stat for a boss is 1,000. So it shouldn't be too difficult to maneuver around. In terms of taking damage and dying, the biggest decider here is going to be, can you do enough damage in the 1 minute time that you potentially have? And for most people, it's no. This is going to be a massive challenge, and it is going to require some transcendent characters. For the first time, Guild Quest is going to require potentially a max transcendent character. You know, we've seen with the very hard difficulty, you don't need max transcendent characters. 1 out of 5 characters are perfectly fine. This, though, yeah, it's going to require you having potentially the best team and potentially having some really good investment into said characters. And since we know the Guild Quest weeks, if we quickly break down the teams, the best teams you're looking at here, if you want to have the best time tackling this quest, and remember, if you do tackle the nightmare difficulty, I don't think the idea here would be to beat the quest. It would be to see how far you possibly can go. Depending on what the orb rewards are looking like, you know, even if you get to the 3rd or 5th boss, you might be getting more orbs. And if that's the case, I'm fine with that. I'm not going into this quest expecting to beat it even with my team, but I'm curious to see how far I will potentially get. In this case though, since it is the immediate Aaroniero Guild Quest, your best lead without a doubt is going to be Kilgay. He is a character that can single-handedly solo the very hard difficulty Guild Quest at 1 out of 5 by himself. Super easy too. So you know, going into this difficulty, the nightmare difficulty, Kilgay as the lead is going to be your best bet. Pair him with someone like 1,000 Year Blood or Soifon, and she might be a character that you could potentially get to 5-5 now thanks to these special move trial quests. But she's going to be a really good character since she is immune to freeze. She does have a boost SA2 with the booster skill, and also does have quite a respectable damage output. A replacement for her, and in a way maybe a better replacement, would be someone like the New Year's Renji. In his case, his boost is providing less stats because he only has a boost SA2 without the booster skill, but he does provide a barrier, and that's going to mean your team can stay at full stamina easier, and therefore being able to do more damage. Alongside that, your second best partner is going to be the fierce Aaroniero, a premium character, has been in the game for quite some time. She is a character designed for Guild Quest, does more damage in Guild Quest, and if you have her duped out or even have her, she's definitely going to be worth using. And that's pretty much your 3 best characters. You can alternate between Soifon and also Renji, but that's the ideal team that you want to use for this particular quest. When it comes to the second part of the week, phase number 2, in this case, you are using ranged no affiliation killers, so your best lead without a doubt is going to be the Parasol version of Macy. If you have her, gonna make this quest significantly easier. Not only is she providing great crowd control with the weakening and also paralysis, she also does have a Vortex SA2, so even if you don't inflict the stat element, you're sure to protect your team for majority of the quest. As for your 2 normal attack damage characters, because that's definitely going to be your play here, you need to have normal attack damage sides. Kagarosa is going to be your best DPS without a doubt. Have him in your team, it's going to make a massive difference. And then for your second character, your team booster, you can either use a Swimsuit Momo or 1,000 Year Blood or Masaki. My recommendation, 1,000 Year Blood or Masaki. She provides the barrier, and she also does do a tad bit more damage than Momo, without the fact that Momo can actually inflict slow, and that might not help you out, especially if you are using Macy, where the idea is that you want to inflict stat elements constantly, and a Momo inflicting slow would kind of ruin the run. And given the fact that you are working with upwards to 190 million HP stat overall, Momo inflicting slow generally might ruin the run. So yeah, with that said, lads, that's the video for today, just going over the new limited time nightmare difficulty. Again, I wasn't that confident about it. Like, I just didn't like the idea of us getting already a new difficulty when very hard is still not accessible to a lot of players out there. And I was really hoping when it got data mined like a week ago that it was limited time, and luckily that is the case. I think the fact that it's limited time isn't that big of a deal. If you can do it, you get extra rewards. If you can't, it's not that big of a deal, but it's definitely worth attempting if you possibly can. Because again, there are going to be more rewards, right? What those rewards will be, I guess we'll find out on the 25th. I will be live when this does drop. And at the same time, with the introduction of this new difficulty, even though it's only a limited time difficulty, the very hard difficulty has seen a slight nerf, with the enemies getting a tad bit weaker, potentially making it easier for you to tackle the very hard guild quests. But in the comments below, let me know what team you lads plan to use. Are you even going to attempt this difficulty? And how do you feel about it? But I hope to see you lads next time. Take care and peace.